microphone. Tell them who you are first.
Good afternoon, everybody. Return time is 1:30 p.m. I'm Fekete, and my mom is going to do what does my child do at potential strategies for parents to address behavioral issues at home.
Thank you.
Child.
Yes, thank you for that introduction, and
Hi, Mom.
hi, Mom and Dad. Okay, actually, let me take it off. Okay, so we are going to talk about why does my child do that? Practical strategies for parents to address issues at home. So before we get started, I just want to give you my background and why I'm up here. So out of college, I went to school to become a special education teacher. I went to Rutgers and they had a fantastic program there for kids with autism. So that's where I got my start, and I was able to work on my certification to become a board certified behavior analyst. So that was way back in 2004 that I got that. 2 years later, this guy came along, and so I was able to put all of that education to good use in a way I never imagined, in my own life. It's a lot easier to tell other parents what to do. Let me just, put that out there. Much, much more difficult to do it at home with your own child. So I basically have been a stay-at-home mom now for, next week it will be 18 years. So I have not been in the workforce, but I kept my certification up until 2000 and then I let it go. So I am no longer a board certified behavior analyst because I haven't been paying the fees or taking, the coursework, but all the education is there. So anyway, so we're gonna just do like a broad kind of introduction to everything, and then hopefully we'll have some time for some questions at the end, and then without further ado, it will be time for everyone's favorite part of the conference. So let's get started. Okay, so the reason our kids have behaviors is because they work. So what do we do to change this? Well, there is a science out there called Applied Behavior Analysis, ABA for short. And it is a research-backed, using research-backed interventions to improve socially significant behavior. So that's really important when you're thinking about a behavior, because sometimes a behavior might bother us, but it's something that maybe our child does when he's just watching TV. And so it's not really impacting him in the great big world out there. It's just something that maybe bothers you. So that's really not the kind of thing I would recommend targeting because it's not socially significant. You also want to make sure that it is something that is actually impacting his or her life before you're actually going to go in and address the behavior. So now, unfortunately, there is no magic pill. It's a lot of work to address behaviors in this way. So know that going into it. I'm going to put my glasses on because I can't see this. So reinforcement versus punishment. It's really important to go over the definitions first. So reinforcement is a procedure used to increase the likelihood that a behavior is going to occur. And punishment is a procedure used to decrease the likelihood that a behavior will occur. So a show of hands, how many think that yelling is a punishment? Okay. How many think that yelling is reinforcement? Okay. What about clapping? Would that be reinforcement? Like if the audience is clapping for me right now when I'm finished, what do you think?
Yes.
How about turning off music?
Turning off.
Is that punishment or? Okay. All right, we're getting the hang of this. And how about a hug?
That's reinforcement.
Well, it sure depends who it's from though, doesn't it? Right. Okay, so my examples are that there are no absolutes. So if you're yelling, you may intend it to be a punishment, but some people like negative attention. So in that case, you're yelling at your child because you're frustrated, could actually be reinforcing their behavior. So that's why it's really important. I want you to think differently about the way you do things, because I think it's really easy. In the examples we were talking about before, like if you fly off the handle in public about something, you know, if someone says something to you and you fly off the handle about it, that's not necessarily the best way. It's better to have something in your head planned in advance, that this is what I'm gonna do if this happens. So the yelling may not work. Do we do it? Of course we all do it, but it's not necessarily, you may be actually making it worse. Clapping. Let's say I really don't like the sound of clapping. It's too loud for me. And you think you're reinforcing me because I just finished my talk and you're all clapping for me. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's really bothering me. So that was actually punishing. An example with the turning off the music. So if my son is listening to, oh, I don't know,
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift, right?
I'll do that.
And somebody turns it off. How do you feel?
Mad.
Mad.
Old TV.
Or the TV. But what if it's Metallica and you don't want to listen to it and someone turns it off? How does that feel?
Sad.
Well, if you're your father, it would be sad, but if it's you, you might say, all right, that's good, let's put on some Taylor Swift, right?
Yeah.
So there are no absolutes. I just want you to think of that. That's really important going forward for the rest of everything we're talking about today. Okay, is behavior communication? Many challenging behaviors do serve a communicative function. So it's our job to determine why the behavior is happening or what message that behavior is trying to communicate. Then what you want to do is replace it with a more appropriate response. And this is especially important if your child is nonverbal. And before any of this can happen, though, you do have to rule out medical causes, because sometimes there are different illnesses that can trigger certain things in kids. That you could be dealing with anxiety, you know, things that would have a different response than if it is just a pure behavior. So how do we figure out the function? It's called the ABCs of behavior. That stands for antecedent, behavior, and consequence. So the antecedent is what happens before the behavior, then you have the behavior, the consequence is what happens after the behavior. And it's really important to look for details, because this is how you're going to figure out what your child is trying to communicate. If your child, for example, let's see, if Pete is watching TV and it's something he really enjoys, and then I come in and turn off the TV, and he might come up and start yelling, right? So I can very clearly say, well, I took away something he wanted, and so that's why he's having this behavior, right? We can figure it out. Sometimes you just have to take a step back, and that's how you can figure out if you're looking at all the details of what's happening in this moment. And you're wondering, so are transitions difficult for your child? Is going from, you know, school to the bus difficult? Is going from playing toys to eating dinner difficult? Any transition can be difficult for a child. So if you have been able to narrow it down that it's only happening during transitions, then maybe your child needs a warning before it happens, or maybe something to distract them a little bit when you're going to something less preferred. Does the behavior occur when your child is asked to do something they don't enjoy? Also, I mean, that's obviously all, you know, could maybe have a behavior if it's something we don't enjoy. But if our child doesn't have the words to tell us that they're not enjoying it, that can make all the difference. And another question would be, do they happen during downtime? So maybe that your child needs something to keep them occupied. So we have the 4 functions of behavior. The reason, according to applied behavior analysis, that behaviors will occur, 4 reasons. You have attention, escape, a tangible, or automatic. So attention is pretty obvious, you know, but it could be positive or negative attention. So it could be the clapping attention, or it could be the yelling. It could be getting someone to look at you. It could be getting someone to touch you. Any kind of attention would qualify. Escape, again, kind of obvious. You want to get out of what you're doing. So if I present him with a math worksheet right now, there's a good chance he's not going to want to do it. So he might engage in a behavior to get out of doing the math worksheet. A tangible would be, let's say, anything he wants, an iPhone, a piece of candy, soda, something that you can grasp. And automatic, is pretty difficult to extinguish because in this case, it feels good to the person who's doing it. So really, whatever you're doing out there doesn't have an impact on the behavior. They just like how it feels. So the other really tricky thing is that it can be more than one at a time. So think of a class clown. Let's say the teacher asks Curtis, what is the answer to this problem up on the board? And Curtis doesn't know the answer. He might make a joke to deflect and try to get everyone to laugh. Then he gets so he escaped the question, but then he gets a laugh from the audience and realizes, oh, I kind of like that. So now this behavior might have two functions. So that can be extra tricky to figure out because he originally did it to get out of doing his assignment. Then after that, he liked the attention he got. So it's very complicated. And anxiety is a different beast. So we're not going to talk about that right now because that can cause all sorts of behaviors that, are treated in this way. Okay. Does anyone have a question about any of the functions, the definitions and everything? Okay. So the next thing that you want to do is find a replacement behavior. So once you've hypothesized, wow, the behavior is occurring, you need to teach your child a replacement behavior. So if, let's say, we'll go back to the Curtis example. As a teacher, I realized he did that because he didn't know the answer. So in the future, what I can do is I can let Curtis know that I'm going to come over and I'm going to stand in front of you when I'm going to ask you a question so you can prepare for it. You know you're about to be next. So maybe that might help decrease his anxiety. Or I could tell him, if you don't know the answer, it's perfectly acceptable for you to say to me, I don't know the answer. Can I ask a friend? Can I have help? I want to give him a strategy that will help him in the future so he doesn't feel the need to have the behavior. Instead, he can use the strategy that I'm giving him. So the important thing is that the replacement skill has to have the same function as the behavior. So if we've determined that the behavior is happening for attention, we cannot then give them an escape to get out of it. We have to use the same thing, whatever the function was. It also has to be effective. So if it's too involved, it's not going to work. And it also has to be efficient, like pretty easy to get to the point that they want to get to. So consistency, consistency, consistency. You want to practice as often as you can. You want to get grandparents, aunts, uncles, caregivers, teachers, everyone to hold your child to the same standard. And, if you have a situation where when your child is in school, they're having one consequence, at home, they're having a different consequence, and then when they're at their grandparents' house, they're having another consequence, that child's going to be all over the place. So you all have to get on the same page with how you're treating behaviors. And you want to be aware of the one-armed bandit. So the example there is that when, let's say you go to Vegas and you use the one-armed bandit, you don't win every time, and you're not going to win every time, but you're hoping for that time when you're going to get the big payout. And so if it happens once, now you've been reinforced. And so the next time you're going to try it again, remembering how that felt to get it that one time, and you're going to keep trying it. So if we as parents do that, like once in a while, we say, oh, just fine, just go have the iPad. And then every other time we're saying no, they're going to keep going for it, whatever behavior worked, to try to get that iPad or that reward again. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So at home, it's really helpful to catch your child being good. You don't always want to give them the big attention when they're having negative behaviors. If they're doing something nice, you want to say, you know what? I noticed you're not using your iPhone right now. Good job over there. Good job paying attention, Pete. Yeah.
I think I.
Okay. You also want to give your child a voice, which I think is one of the single most important things that you can do. Many children that parents that I've spoken to are nonverbal. So you want to find a way that your child can communicate. if that is with sign language, if it's with a picture exchange system, if it is with an iPad, you know, there are all kinds of things out there nowadays. And it's really important that you fight for that at school, that you get your child that help so that they can have a way to communicate their basic wants and needs to you. If they have no way to communicate to you, I mean, imagine if you're a tourist and, you know, you go to Italy, you don't speak Italian, you don't have a guidebook, you don't have your phone to do Google Translate, and you really need to ask where the bathroom is, and you're trying to find somebody to ask, they don't understand English, you don't understand Italian. Can you imagine how frustrating that would be and how urgent you feel? And that's how our children feel when they don't have a way to express their wants and needs to us. So it comes out in any way that they can think of it, and it's a negative behavior that we don't want to deal with. But if we don't give them a way to communicate their wants and needs to us, that's what we're going to get, because they have no way to let us know what is happening, how to make something stop. So at the very least, we need to make sure that we have a way for them to communicate their very basic wants and needs. And with PD, we started with sign language, very simple signs, but something like eat. That one, anybody can figure that out. You don't need to know sign language. If you see, you know, a little baby going like this, you kind of can figure, I think, that he's hungry. So when I was feeding him, I would grab his hand and have him sign eat, and then I would quickly give him a bite and say, oh, eat, you want to eat, you're hungry, here you go. So you're talking through it the whole time. And then eventually he understood, oh, if I do this, she feeds me. So that's a really good way to get them to understand that when they communicate, when they sign or use the picture exchange communication system, they're going to get something positive out of it. And the same thing, he really loved like music. So we would teach him, I think we made up a sign for music. And when he learned that, he learned he could have music. And then I would shut it off after 10 seconds. And he would get upset and start crying. And I would have him sign music again. And so we would do that over and over and over again until he understood that he has to sign music and then he's going to get it. And so we would practice and practice and practice, and it stuck with him. You know, also you want to teach a sign like stop or no if they can't have the words for it. Because again, if someone is giving you a hug and you don't want a hug, or if someone is playing music and you don't like it, or if, you know, if there's anything that you need to express no and stop, those are really important signs to teach our kids so they have a way to tell you that. And if they can tell you that, you're decreasing the odds that the behavior will happen because they're able to communicate that to you. So really the basis of all of this is that we need to give our children a voice in some way so that they have a way to let us know that they either don't like something or that they really need something. You fine tune it as you go along. But in the beginning, it has to be the most basic things. You know, I would give him something salty to make him thirsty, so that way he's going to be motivated to ask me for a drink. You know, or have someone else play with something, you know, he likes. If he wants, you know, an iPhone, have someone else have the iPhone, and then you could teach him whatever sign or word or sound or a picture that you're going to use for that, and you practice over and over to have them learn the skill of asking for something and that they get something. Of course, school should be helping with this, and it's really important for them to get a lot of speech therapy when they're little so that they can learn all of these skills and how to communicate. But it's never too late. No matter what age they are, they can still learn basic communication skills so that they can get their wants and needs out there. See, so we talked about that, work with your child's speech therapist, contrive situations in your home environment you want to practice, and you want to make sure that you're able to generalize. So any skills that the speech therapist or the teachers are working on in school, it's not useful if they can only do it in the speech therapist room. They have to be able to do it at home as well, or in the community, or when they're somewhere else. So whatever they're working on in school, you want to try to practice at home so that they can generalize it. And it's important also, if you can, to not give your child anything for free. So when we were working on the eat sign with Pete, I didn't ever just give him his food. I always made him ask for it first so that he learned that association. And, you know, it worked. I mean, like we talked about the walk and the talk before. He has a lot to say now, don't you, Pete?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you want to examine your response to your child's behavior. you may actually be reinforcing it. So if your child likes negative attention and you're yelling at them, you're going to increase the behavior. If, your child wants to escape a situation and if they hit their sibling and you say, that's it, you're leaving this room, and you pull them out, well, you just reinforced it. So you have to try to figure out patterns at home of why a certain thing, if a certain thing keeps happening in a similar setting, you want to notice that pattern and say, okay, this is happening every time, Blippi goes on, he has a behavior, so maybe he doesn't like watching that. Or every time this happens, we're noticing it. So any patterns that you see, you want to take note of so that you can try to give them something that will replace that behavior in that setting. Okay, so that is all I've got for now. Do we have questions that maybe we want to talk about? Anything?
We're going to a fighting stage, massively at the moment.
Hello. We're going through a fighting stage really bad at the moment, and I'm happy for a while, and everyone said not to react. To make it really, make it worse, but it's really hard to not want to throw him out the window. And he takes it out on us mainly, nursery camp, he doesn't do it at all. So it makes me think that it is more of a behaviour thing rather than communication, because if there is communication surely between the nursery as well. I don't know, any tips to do with biting would be sure.
Thank you.
So one thing I would say is that I think that happens a lot, that something will happen at home and not at school or vice versa. My first instinct is that you are on a different plane than any of his teachers, your mom. So he wants your attention most of all, right? But it could be that he likes the attention. It could be that he likes the feeling of it. It could be that you're asking him something at home that they don't ask him to do at school and he's trying to escape from it. So, without sitting there in the moment and seeing it, but it could very well be attention. It's definitely always best to err on the side of this could be attention motivated, so I'm not going to react strongly to it. When someone's biting you, your instinct is probably to pull away, but then they can actually really get you. The better thing is to kind of push him into it a little, and that opens his mouth. So that way it's a little easier to get him off. But it's definitely best not to have big reactions, and it's easier said than done. It's not easy to be neutral, but it definitely doesn't come naturally to me. I think that if in the moment that there's something that he wanted, if he wanted a hug from you, or if he wanted some candy, or if he's just bored, you want to try to give him those words and say, oh, I know you're waiting on dinner, you're really hungry right now. Let's say, Mom, eat. And, you give him the words for whatever it seems that he may want in the moment. If it seems like he's just doing it because he likes how it feels, then it might be best to replace it with like something that he could chew on. So they have like all kinds of, in OT, like online, I don't know, Krista would probably have some really great suggestions, but they have actual like hard plastic tubes that you can chew on, and that gives them that sensation. And so it might not be something that we really want our child to do out in public, thinking that like it draws more attention or is a little bit stigmatizing. But for now, I would say that's a better option than having them bite you. So I try to look at the lesser of two. Would you like to offer?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, so if the way it feels when pressure, there's some good, I have done so that might be deep pressure, so like Eliza needed that, but it took us a long time to figure that out. She needs words. Deep pressure, she needs to pull, push. It's very organizing for her nervous system, which gets very dysregulated very fast. And so it actually, she needs it, like, the whole, was it proprioception, knowing where your body is. Yeah, so hers is pretty poor. And so it's like, imagine if you were floating all over the place and you didn't ever feel like capable of the floor, how anxiety producing that would feel. And so it's like, that's their way to like ground themselves. So can be really like organizing for the nervous system and tons of chewy things. Yeah, and even my other daughter going through like because of math anxiety, because of craziness of our house, was like chewing all her hair off, and because of the stigmatizing, do you really want it? But anyway, so there are some that are bigger. There's bracelets, there's necklaces, and for Molly, for a long time, she had a little feather. It was like a silicone feather that just looked like a cute accessory. She would just take that around, and we recently had to pull that back out, and she'd take, yeah. So it's just really soothing.
And they can go through phases, because both of our boys went through chewing phases, and they've grown out of them now, but for the most part.
But what you would also want to do is, if you're going to use a replacement toy like this, you would say, oh, Vinny, do you need to chew right now? Tell mommy that you need your chewing toy, and whatever word he would be able to say, even if it's you want to have him say that. Say, okay, you need your here's your chewing toy, and that way he's asking for it instead of biting you in order to get it. Okay, I hope that's helpful. Thanks, Chris.
Hi, so my daughter Ava, she has some behaviors that seem to be provoked by anxiety. I wanted to know what your advice was for behaviors that are anxiety as the driver of the behavior. For example, separation anxiety is really common for her. When I drop her off in the room, or when we have friends over, she gets kind of over emotional and lays on the floor crying, a little bit more autistic in tendency. What are your thoughts around anxiety behaviors?
Just to add a detail to that, so like she takes a bus to her school every day. So for like 9 months, she sort of like pulls at us and screams and cries. And the minute the bus pulls away within 5 seconds, she's completely calm and is completely happy. So we've tried like being really positive about the bus. We've had the bus driver play music. We've like done a lot of things, but for the whole school year, it never improved. Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as that goes, it does sound like it could be a transition issue, between home and school, and it could be anxiety that's causing it. It could be that she likes the extra attention she's getting from you right before she's getting on the bus. It is really difficult to just give you a blanket because we don't know what the function is. But I think sometimes giving them like a transition object. So in our case, my son likes to listen to music. We give him a little portable radio that he could use so he could listen while he's leaving the house, getting on the bus and on the bus. It doesn't always work, for him. Maybe he could shed a little light on that. But, you also want to maybe have something on the bus that she only gets on the bus. So that way, and it's hard, but you would have to limit it, because if she had it outside of the bus, it wouldn't have the value. But remember, when you get on the bus, you get whatever toy it is, or, they can't eat, I'm sure, on the bus, but, something tangible that, really likes, that she only gets on the bus. And it might be helpful to have a picture card, and I'm sure school could help you with this, where there's a picture, say, of your home with mom and dad, then a picture of the bus, and a picture of the toy that she gets on the bus, or, whatever activity it is. But sometimes you just have to keep pushing through and working, and, anxiety would be different in the case, if that's the root cause of it. I would definitely recommend that you find a counselor or, a psychologist or a psychiatrist to kind of help intervene. They, would be able to offer their expertise. She's young for medication, so I wouldn't, go there at this point, but it's really helpful to have someone who, they can do cognitive behavioral therapy with her, and, there are all those tools there that, it's not really something that you would just know what to do at home. You would really need the guidance, from an expert at that point. But I think a lot of us deal with that, with the transition from home to school, just stopping something that they're enjoying. He has struggled with that at school. At the end of the day, you get, some fun downtime, and now you're telling me I need to stop this. and get on the bus, well, I don't want to do that. And so, we've dealt with that as well. It can be really challenging.
My question was, when it comes to behaviors that are motivated by automatic, is replacement really the only option there? Are there other things you can do? My son's very sensory speaking, and he has several behaviors that he does just because he likes them, they feel good. But they aren't always like, for example, he chews, and we've ruled out medical reasons, pica, iron deficiency, anything like that. They choose wood specifically, like silicone bracelet, like I made him cloth necklaces, chewing necklaces, bought the necklaces, doesn't want that, wants to eat wood, and I'm not, like, I don't really want to just give him a block of wood to carry around. So it's very, I'm not sure what I can do to replace it. Is there something else you can do to try and mitigate that behavior?
What if you took some flavor of something that he doesn't like, and you rub it on the wood, which might deter him or encourage him to seek something better tasting?
So I bought like, the bitter sprays and all. I did that, and while I was spraying it on things, I just put the bottle down, and there was like liquid still dripping off the bottle, and he went over and he literally licked it off of the bottle.
Oh.
I just did not care. I have yet to find a flavor he does not, like, I mean, he's also 50, but like, if he finds it on the floor, it's yum. I don't.
So I tried that, it didn't work.
Yeah, I'm scared of doing spicy stuff because I don't want him rubbing it in his eye.
Right. No, I definitely wouldn't go there. I think I would try to find something as similar to that texture as possible, because to your point, sometimes you're not going to use replacement skill, especially if it's automatic. You would then maybe want to teach that there's a time and a place that's appropriate for something. So say, for any behavior, oh, okay, you can do this when you're in your bedroom, but you can't do it when you're at school, and you can't do it in the living room, and, this is where you're doing it. So for something like that, I mean, wood actually would be dangerous to chew on, and so it's something that you have to find a replacement for, because you can't allow that one in any setting. But I can't even think of something off the top of my head that's the same texture as wood. But there has to be something out there that, maybe we can all brainstorm later and try to come up with something. But it seems like he craves that attention, that feeling, but he also might like the attention that he gets because people tend to panic if they see someone doing something that they know can hurt them. So it could have more than one function in that case. But yeah, I can't think of off the top of my head, so we'll definitely talk about that offline a little bit later. But I do think it's also important with the automatic that you can teach them this behavior is fine when you're in this environment. And you would just keep reminding them, if it's something that you want to allow in the bedroom, but not in the living room, you would just pick them up and say, oh, that's fine, but we're gonna be in our bedroom when we're doing this. And you just keep doing it over and over, not giving them a lot of yelling or attention, because then you could inadvertently reinforce that behavior. But you just want to keep letting them know, this is the boundary, this is the line, this is how we're going to do this. And I thought I saw another.
Oh, just that there's, dogs, so I have a dog bed, that's really fair. There's dog chews that are, that taste like wood. And I just prefer to use that texture. And it has the texture of wood.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
Okay.
you could look into the dog.
Thanks, Krista.
We do.
Let's try to sell a house right now. He's chewing the window trim in the corners of the driveway.
Dog.
There's sugar cane.
That's what I was looking up. Sure thing. Yeah, it's 5%.
Texture, it's not ideal, but. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. It's the real thing.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on certain days. It's like 19 and it's on below.
Right.
Yeah.
But I knew that the bucket up.
Yeah.
Well, we go and look through something else, huh? We'll find something else. to do.
Well, so it's happening at night.
Yeah.
That's the only time you're
Yeah.
seeing.
Well, he would during the day, but we're there to stop.
Wow.
Yeah, we're there to police it
How much
during the day, but then at night, we make that like 3 a.m. It's not something to work
So
with.
that could totally be part of it then, that he knows if you hear, if you have like a monitor that you can hear it happening, so you come into the room.
Oh, we don't.
You don't. Okay,
Which is what,
okay.
which is what makes me think it's automatic, because he does a lot of, like gags, he does a lot of sensory input speaking.
Oh, it absolutely could be that. I'm just trying to think of, if every time he does it, if you come to the room or talk to him through the monitor, he could also like that. Like if you wake up, "Oh, I wonder what mom and dad are doing, you know, and he doesn't have a way to ask that, so he, and it could have started out that he liked how it felt, and then moved on to, oh, I also like getting that attention when it happens, for sure. But yeah, I would say the best thing to do is block it as much as possible in his room. I mean, I guess you can't take the window trim, you know, off that. There are certain things you can't reasonably do. If there's a way to block it though, I know, some of the kids would climb out of bed and it would be unsafe at night. And, I know on our Facebook page, we have the plans to build a bed that would actually keep the child in it. It's similar to a crib, but
But it's
for.
made out of wood.
I wasn't even thinking of that.
PVC pipe.
Yeah, just that idea that it's something that if the child, you know, behavior was that they were escaping from their bed every night. Well, sometimes you just need to do something to prevent that from happening, so you put them in like an adult-sized crib, so they can't get out. And now you don't have to deal with that behavior. A lot of the parents online were talking about, the child going to the bathroom at night in their diaper and then getting into everything. So the best solution to that is to prevent it. If, you put them in a onesie that like zips up in the back and, you know, maybe it has like a complicated button or something on it that they can't get into. If that doesn't work, you want to start looking, are they having a bowel movement every night around 10? Okay, so maybe then you need to go in there at 9:50 and kind of wait for it. And, you know, change them immediately so there's nothing there to touch. If, you know, you want to notice the pattern, if they're going at the same time every day, it's always happening at night, and that's when they're getting into the diaper, because during the day you're there to see it and you would prevent it. You want to block that from being able to even happen in the first place, if that makes sense. But yeah, the crib example in this case, I was thinking more like, oh, just so they can't get out, you put them in the crib. So you don't want them to chew wood, we have to get all the wood out of the room. You know, it might not be possible in this setting, but as much as you can get out or cover with something or block, like with a, you know, non-wooden dresser. You know, there has to be a way to block it so that when you can't be with him, you can keep him safe. Yeah. So hopefully we can, like I said, we can talk a little bit later.
Thank you. I don't have a question, but are y'all familiar with the safety sleeper beds, the tents? I mean, those are phenomenal. There's not a bit of wood on them. And it's netting and it's metal poles that are covered by the thing. Our daughter is 17 now, but she slept in it forever. And she can't get out of it. So, but it doesn't look like, you know, when friends are over, it doesn't
looks like a
look like
tent.
you have your kid locked up, you know? And so, she liked it so much that even when I was transitioning her to a regular bed, I would keep the flap up and she would yank it down and be like, snooze it, you know, like, so. It's a great, for us, we were finally able to sleep at night because she could not get out of her bed. And so.
You had a travel one too.
Yeah, they are travel one is smaller. It's not as sturdy as the bed one, but you do twin or double size, whatever, and it changed our lives. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the suggestion, we have one of those for the crib, the only suggestion I would make is, they only zip. And so your kid doesn't give up, but work that zipper down. So what we did was we just added like a button up top and then put like a hair tie through the zipper and then tie it around the button. So like, made it very, very difficult. It just bought us a lot more time with that. But again, like most of these things that we have multiple ways to close them and they don't, they just have one. So I think it's also okay to augment them.
Yeah, and ours was not on a crib, so it was when she was out of the crib and in a regular bed. Cause I've seen some of the crib ones, you have to be careful because the kids can.
Fall over the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, I have just a question about, our maybe like acts totally different with me than she does with my wife. And a lot of the times I don't see like the gravity of her behavior because she, I'm either at work all day and she's really sweet with me when I come home. And, it doesn't line up with the frustration that Cassie's feeling. And so, I know a lot of that is us needing to be on the same page more, but I was wondering if you had any recommendations on how to navigate, like, when they prefer one parent over another and act totally different with one parent over another.
Okay, so, I can relate to that as well. He's very verbal and he actually, will tell me you're my favorite. And he'll just say that. But I'm also the one that he is more likely, to push back on, And I think, as a stay-at-home mom, I was the one with him, giving him all of the consequences and doing all of the like dirty work with him. And then, dad comes home at the end of the day and kind of is just like, okay, let's go play. And, so certainly, in the ABA world, we would say you've done a fine job of pairing yourself with reinforcement. So, you come home at the end of the day and you're doing all the fun things, but when it's bath time or feeding time or all the hard things, like mom's getting to do that. And so, she realizes like, oh, the things I don't enjoy, mom's making me do. And all the things that are fun, you're making me do. So I would say it's worth trying to, switch things up a little bit. And, maybe when you come home, you're the one to get from the bath. And especially if she gives mom a hard time and she doesn't give you a hard time, well, then that's a no-brainer, like that's your new job. You get to do that. Also maybe it's worth looking at sometimes, because I know I react differently than my husband reacts to things. And so we're not always on the same page either. And if one is having better success, then the other one can say, oh, wait a minute, so I did this and it didn't work out really well, but he did that and it did, so I can try it. But I think it's also fair that if mom's responsible for all the day-to-day nitty-gritty things that she doesn't enjoy doing, well, of course, then she's gonna see mom coming, oh, great, it's like that white coat syndrome, is that what it's called? Yeah. When you see the doctor and you think, oh, great, I'm about to get a shot, so the kid starts freaking out. Our doctor got away with that by, having only the nurses give the shots out. So now when she comes in, the kids were never afraid of her and they were happy to see her. And she's probably one of your favorite people, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a brilliant strategy, but when mom's the one always doing those things and you're the one only doing the fun things, it's natural that that's how, she's gonna behave. So take on some of those less appealing tasks, and that way you're getting the practice even of, okay, I have to work through this with her. She's giving me a hard time too. And, she doesn't want to take a bath or she doesn't want to, brush her teeth or, all the things that she doesn't enjoy. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I try to take on some of those things, but I think, I'm not at my wit's end, a lot of the times, and with that, just going back and forth. Like, we need to get better at that.
I think it's also hard when you're there all day and you don't have a break. And it's like, you just need a break. And I think I was guilty of that. Like my husband would come home and it's like, you're ready to just hand off, like I'm taking the walk now. And, with the dog, yeah, because she won't talk back.
I think it's also helpful from a spouse and a happy marriage perspective, that if you are the parent that is preferred, that you don't take the approach of, well, the kids are great for me. I don't know what's wrong with you, but I've had no problem with them today. Right? So when your wife is telling you that she's had a hard time with the kids that day, she doesn't necessarily want you to fix it. She wants you to listen, empathize, say, I understand, it's been a hard day, how can I help? But if you come in, and I'm guilty of this, is like the rest of you, they're fine with me, you must be the problem, right? So. So you're taking notes. Yeah. So empathize, you guys are a team, right? I think I'm not being any revelatory news here that parents with special needs children are a lot more likely to experience a divorce situation. Because of situations like this, it's very taxing on a marriage. So the more you can be together in your strategies of how you're going to parent, and the more that you can empathize and listen with the other person, because in our house, Lindsay gets the brunt of the punishment from our children, and they're better for me. And so if I were to come in and say, oh, well, I just don't believe you, or I don't understand because they don't do that for me, I think it helps if you can empathize and listen and try to help her with that, as opposed to just going on with your day expecting that it doesn't happen.
Mom just needs to go away for the weekend.
Didn't mean this to turn into a parenting session, but
Yeah, you run down here, you're faster than I am.
I've gotta run out. So I will tell you from experience, mom going away for the weekend does not solve the problem.
I'm sure you go
Dean and
away
I-
for the weekend, that's a
Dean
terrible.
and I, I'm going away for a week, 3 times a year doesn't solve the problem. What literally saved our family was taking, the Incredible Years parenting class together. And we've gone through it several times to reinforce what we practice, but, it's a phenomenal program that is evidence-based, and, it's from a psychologist out of Seattle. It's designed specifically for kids who have ADHD and on the autism spectrum. But like many things, we had to pull from what was available to us, and, we've seen it implemented with all different populations, and I'm behind it 100%. So I would just encourage you all to check that out before I go to my school.
Just to add 2 points, the comment, which I think is spot on, of like, well, they're not bad for me. I don't think that it just extends to spouses. I think it's in-laws and your parents who are gonna say really stupid stuff like that a lot more.
I haven't seen any of these behaviors.
Yeah,
What are you
this
talking
never
about?
happens. The biggest thing that we found, because our daughter did the same thing, where she like really preferred one of us over another, was we started switching off doctor's appointments, which made a huge difference because they're terrible and the kids don't want to be there. No offense, Dr. Isbell, but the doctors don't make it easy either. They don't pay attention to your kid who's like going through the syringe drawer as they're like trying to talk about stuff. So we found like switching that off helped. We also switched, like, one of us would take the kids to the playground knowing that coming back was terrible. So that it just like changed up the routine for one of us. So, and the bath time I thought was a great thing. That's also, but I think those small things every now and again really did make a difference. But it's important to be the fun dad, I think. That's also.
So Marlene is now 11, and we found that there were some behaviors we could really handle when she was smaller. And we could, they're not cute anymore, but also physically, we could say, okay, we're done with the tablet now, we're counting down, okay, now I'm gonna help you turn it off, right? But now she's big, and, it's a different game. So I'd love to hear, in addition to what you're talking about, you're really helpful, if there are other thoughts or ideas that people may have had who have been through that physical transition of just the kids growing, right? I mean, the size makes a difference, and it shifts some of the dynamics.
I can relate to this as well. He's, taller than I am now.
And faster.
And faster. Yeah, he's way faster than I am. He's taller and he's very strong. So I can relate to that as well. Like I said, it's not cute anymore. When they're little and they do something, sometimes it's like, oh, that's so cute. And, then you realize like that's not cute when they're 15 or 25. And so you always have to think, into the future about what that will be like. But definitely from our experience, we have to draw those firm boundaries. And even if it's physical, I'll say to him, if you can't shut this iPad off now, then you're not going to get it tomorrow. And then I have to hold him to that. Now, of course, I'm punishing myself as well. But
Small break.
right, exactly. But if he learns, okay, if I don't give it up when she tells me to, and then I lose it the next day. But you have to really hold to that, you have to hope that, repeated exposure to that consequence will then tell them, okay, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm gonna give it up. Maybe set a timer in advance, sometimes that helps a little bit, sometimes that causes more anxiety. So you have to try with your child to see what works for them. It's, sometimes you could transition into something, like if okay, iPad is over, and because we're gonna eat dinner, and I have her favorite dinner. And so, you could say, okay, you asked me for mac and cheese before, so we're gonna switch, I'm gonna take this, and you're gonna have your mac and cheese, then you hide it, put it like completely away so she can't get back to it, because you have to draw the line at some point of, when you want her to be finished with that. But it's definitely not easy, the bigger they get, and that's why the communication, again, has to be so much at the forefront of everything, so that she can say to you, can I have one more minute? I'm about, like, my character didn't die yet, or, because I experience this with my typical children as well. I will tell them, dinner's in 5 minutes, Fortnite is over. And then, I come in to the dining room and nobody's there. And they're all on Fortnite. And by the way, don't get started with that one if you haven't yet. It's completely addictive for them. So then they explain to me, these are not the video games of my generation. And they're playing with other people, and these other people are still alive. And so you want to keep playing while these people are still alive. And, there are only 9 people left. I'm like, well, how much longer is that? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But for them, they just want to finish until everybody dies. And so for me, I give them the hard line of I want 5 minutes. But for them, it's like, well, I can't pause it the way they did Mario Brothers when I was a kid. Like, you would just pause it, he was like, about to jump on the mushroom, and I could come back to it. Well, it's not like that for these games. So maybe also sometimes understanding about, oh, he wants to get to the end of this segment, so they need the words for that. So you want to say, can I have 5 more minutes? And you say, okay, you have 5 more minutes, I'm setting the timer. Or, oh, I want to get until, the end of Elmo's song. Okay, you get to the end of Elmo's song, then it's over. But I understand that, because if I'm in the middle of a program and, someone came in and turned it off, I wouldn't be happy about that. So we want to also understand, like, what could be the reason that they want more? Are they just doing the same thing over and over, and it's never going to change, and they're going to want to keep going? Okay, then you're drawing your hard line and saying, you have 5 more minutes. But if you can figure out that it's something like that, at the end of the song, the end of the segment, then you want to give them the words 5 more minutes. And if they can't do it, hold up a sign that says 5 more minutes, or a sign 5 more minutes. Something to get that point across to you, so that it's communication instead of a behavior.
Hey, Jess, 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes? I appreciate that. Are there any more questions? All right, so we all know that Curtis likes the attention. You're all giving it to him right now, so. All right, well, thank you very much, and thank you.
Okay, we're gonna get ready. Can you set up for the adult panel real quick? So give us like 5 minutes to get the tables up here. If you're participating in the panel, you can come sit up here. If we